What's good, y'all? Welcome back. This is the first part of the last tier in the mysterious slash lost locations iceberg. So it's been a minute, man. We finally made it. Make sure you check that. I'll link the whole playlist and stuff below, and make sure you guys are liking and subscribing and everything, man. I'm trying to really get big, because trust me, you want to see that. All right, so first up on the last tier of this iceberg is Zealandia, also known as Tasmantis. It is an almost entirely submerged mass of continental crust that subsided after breaking away from Gondwanaland around 83 to 79 million years ago. Basically, it has been described as a few different things. It's been described as a submerged continent, a continent fragment, a microcontinent, and then just a plain old continent, like, you know, everything else is basically. The name and concept for Zealandia was proposed by Bruce Luyenden in 1995, and basically satellite imagery shows it to be almost the size of Australia. So this thing is pretty big, even though it's mostly submerged underwater. Basically, a 2021 study suggests Zealandia is about 1 billion years old, which is almost twice the age that geologists had originally thought that it was. And basically 23 million years ago, they think that this landmass basically was completely submerged, although now today 95% of it, or like right around 95% of it, is submerged, whereas the only things that are actually outside or not like completely submerged in water is actually New Zealand and New Caledonia. So that's pretty dope. I didn't even know that, but hey, that's pretty crazy. You learn a new continent on the planet. That's wild. Anyways, moving on. All right, so up next are the flowers of Kaffeklubben Island. So basically, Kaffeklubben Island is practically this polar desert with roughly 30 days of summer. Despite these extremely inhospitable conditions, these two tiny flowering plants like basically managed to just peek through the snow and exist on this like random polar desert. So pretty weird. Basically, the highs in summer is about 20 degrees, so still freezing even when it's summertime. And basically, the only two plants that actually grow up here are Arctic poppies and purple saxifrage. But this thing all grows up out of this like really thin kind of rocky soil, so not any type of conditions where you would normally find plants growing out of. Basically, this area is so far north that it was out of a lot of historical ranges, and basically it was first spotted by Robert Edwin Peary in 1900. It was still left untouched by mankind until it was visited by Danish explorer Laug Koch around the 1920s, like 1921. And basically, when he finally arrived here, he said that these scant meadows of purple saxifrage and Arctic poppies, both of which are completely edible, so you would actually be able to survive over here. They grow around a bunch of different mosses, liverworts, and lichens. And basically, that this place may take a millennia to deposit a layer of soil a foot thick on top of this permafrost and gravel. So you gotta think, basically, all these plants are growing on top of this permafrost. So it's pretty weird, basically. This spot is not only perched on top of the world, but it also holds the title for being the highest elevation plant as well. It was discovered in the Swiss Alps by Swiss botanist Christian Korner at an elevation of 14,780 feet. While it is not possible to visit this island unless you are part of a sponsored expedition with full equipment, both these flowers can be found just throughout Sweden and Norway normally. So if you want to see the flowers, you can still see it, but unless you're part of like some super crazy sponsored expedition, you actually can't go up this mountain and see these specific ones. So all right, so up next is Nabta Playa. So located in Africa, Nabta Playa stands some 700 miles south from the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. It was built more than 7,000 years ago, making Nabta Playa the oldest stone circle in the world and possibly Earth's oldest astronomical observatory. It was constructed by a cattle worshipping cult of nomadic people to mark the summer solstice and the arrival of the monsoons. Basically, in the 1960s, Egypt was planning a major dam project along the Nile River that was going to flood important ancient archaeology sites, basically. So they were going to build this dam, and after this dam was built, it was going to end up flooding all of this archaeological sites. And basically, the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Culture Organization stepped in with funding to help relocate famous structures as well as scour the area for new sites before they were lost forever. So basically, the UN stepped in and basically threw a bunch of money at this, said, yo, listen, we got to move these things out of the way because we got to really preserve this stuff. And while we're at it, we're just going to also dig around and look for some new stuff before you even set the water to go this way so we don't miss anything beforehand. This prominent American archaeologist named Fred Wendorf saw another opportunity. He wanted to search for the ancient origins of the pharaonic Egypt. By luck, in 1973, a Bedouin, a nomadic Arab, this guy was a guide, his name was Eid Marif. He came across a group of what looked like large stone megaliths while crossing the Sahara. Basically, these two were working together since the 1960s. He took this dude out to the site, which sits around 60 miles out from the Nile River. However, Mahmoud Swid, Wendorf's longtime friend and collaborator, remembers the discovery story differently. He says that the entire team was driving across this big stretch of desert in 1973 when they stopped for a bathroom break, and it was then that they discovered this giant megalithic remains. So up next is the shifting sand dunes. Located near Olduvai Gorge lies the spectacular yet mysterious ash dunes of shifting sands. Formed from volcanic ash, these crescent-shaped dunes, these things are a super rare phenomena and are technically referred to as barken. So if I say barken again, you know that that refers to these crescent-shaped dunes. These dunes are formed when there's an ample amount of dust on the ground and an undirectional wind like basically creates this weird moving effect. So it's almost like a optical illusion when you're looking at it. And basically the volcanic ash or dust collects around a rock and continually gathers until it forms what appears to be a small sand dune. Then this process is continuous and basically it progresses. The unidirectional wind causes the dune to move. So basically all this dirt and volcanic ash kind of wraps around this rock until the point where basically the wind is pushing against it so much that it actually starts to move it. So it's not really an optical illusion, but it kind of starts out that way, whereas like the wind kind of makes it look like it's moving until it actually is like sliding across the desert floor. The local Maasai tribe believes that the sand dunes originated from Ol Denoyo Lenge, or the Mountain of God, which is the holiest place in their whole culture. Basically, in addition to not being like other sand dunes in appearances, the dunes are made up of fine black sand, and the sand is also extremely magnetic due to its high levels of iron. Basically, you could grab a handful of this sand, toss it up in the air, and instead of it just like blowing away, all of it will just clump together like a rock kind of thing and fall right back on the ground. So pretty dope. All right, so up next is the lost land of Lyonesse. So Lyonesse is a kingdom which, according to legends, consisted of a long stretch of land basically that started from Land's End at the southwestern tip of Cornwall, England, and it basically stretched all the way to what is now the Isle of Sicily in the Celtic Sea portion of the Atlantic Ocean. And basically it was considered lost after being swallowed by the ocean in a single night. The people of Lyonesse allegedly lived in what is described as fair towns with over 140 churches and worked in fertile low-lying plains. Lyonesse's most significant attraction was a castle-like cathedral that was presumably built on top of what is now the Seven Stones Reef between Land's End and the Isles of Sicily. And basically, Lyonesse is mentioned in Arthurian legend, but particularly in the tragic love and loss story of Tristan and Iseult. So basically, it's mentioned specifically in this one book. Lyonesse is most notable as the home of the hero Tristan, one of the knights from the Round Table. And basically, this dude's father, Meliodas, was the king of Lyonesse. After the death of Meliodas, Tristan became the heir of Lyonesse, but he was never able to take up his inheritance because Lyonesse was actually swallowed by the sea while he was away with his uncle at the king's court in Cornwall. Basically, in later traditions, Lyonesse is said to have sunk beneath the waves of the ocean in a single night, yet stories differ between whether this catastrophic event occurred on November 11th, 1099 or 10 years earlier in 1089. Basically, according to this legend, the people of Lyonesse allegedly had committed a crime so terrible that God took his revenge on them and their whole entire kingdom. The crime is never mentioned in every stories, textbooks, legends. The crime is never mentioned, so nobody really knows exactly what they think they did. But the legend tells of a horrific storm that occurred over the course of a single night, which resulted in an enormous wave that swallowed the kingdom and everything that was in its path. In what may have been a tsunami or a tidal wave, the kingdom of Lyonesse was lost forever and disappeared from the face of this earth as if this thing just never existed. And basically, even to this day, there's no real found proof other than it just being mentioned in a bunch of old books and legends, stories, stuff like that. So pretty interesting, almost kind of like an Atlantis kind of thing. I just got swallowed by the ocean. So pretty interesting shit, man. Hey, who knows? But we're moving on to the next thing. All right, so up next is Villa Epecuén. So Villa Epecuén was this tourist village in Buenos Aires province of Argentina, and is sat on the eastern shore of Laguna Epecuén. Basically, tourism was developed by this English dude after he took out the land on a lease, and then he started to market all the land as having these healing properties. And this dude was honestly a master finesser, because he even went and hired a bunch of Italian scientists to even bolster this claim to say that it was true. And basically, at its height, Villa Epecuén could accommodate at least 5,000 visitors. Basically, tragedy struck on November 6, 1985, when a cyclone caused by a rare weather pattern broke a nearby dam, then the dike protecting the village. Basically, this water rose rapidly, reaching a peak of 10 meters, which is about 33 feet high, and the village became just uninhabitable and was never rebuilt. Basically, nobody ever went back to rebuild it after it just got super flooded out. Many of the ruins are covered by a layer of white and gray salt, and at the time there were up to 280 businesses in this place, including lodges, guest houses, hotels, and businesses that over 25,000 tourists visited between November and March alone. Basically, the town's highest population was around 1,500 at its peak, and as of 2011 it only had one resident, Pavlo Novak, who was born in 1930, and basically after the flood he returned to his house in 2009 when the waters finally receded. And basically in 2013 they made a documentary called Pablo's Villa, which chronicles his life and the life of the town and everything before the actual flood happened, and this town was just completely demolished. So pretty interesting. If you want to learn more about this, I would just go watch the documentary, to be honest. I mean, I'm sure Pablo's got some crazy stories about it. So anyways, moving on to the next one. All right, so up next is UTA Flight 772 Memorial. So UTA Flight 772 was a scheduled international passenger flight of the French airline Union des Transports Aériens, operating from Brazzaville in People's Republic of the Congo. 46 minutes later, after they took off, at its cruising altitude of 35,100 feet or 10,700 meters, a suitcase bomb exploded in the cargo hold, causing the UTA Flight 772 to break up over the Sahara Desert, about 450 kilometers east of Agassiz, which is in the southern tundra of Niger. And basically, the explosion scattered debris hundreds of square miles all over the desert. All 156 passengers and 14 crew members passed away. And basically, where this plane had actually fallen and landed after the wreck, the families of the victims had built this crazy memorial to them. It's basically this life-size silhouette of the aircraft that lies in this big stone circle that's surrounded by 170 broken mirrors, which is each representing somebody that actually died on the flight. And it's jutting out, pointing north like a sundial, and it stands basically is the wing, and it just stands right up out of the thing, and it's acts like a sundial. When you see the pictures, man, it's crazy, because apparently you can actually see this thing from space on the International Space Station. So all right, so up next is the Khatt Shebib wall. Basically, the Khatt Shebib wall is this ancient wall in southern Jordan, and basically the remains of this wall are about 150 kilometers long, making it the longest linear archaeological site in Jordan. The archaeological ruins were first identified by a British diplomat named Sir Alec Kirkbride in 1948. Ever since, a range of disciplines, including archaeologists, scientists, and anthropologists, have all studied the wall. The date of the Khatt Shebib's construction is still unknown. However, it is widely debated by archaeologists. This is evident as some archaeologists argue that the wall was built during the Iron Age, while others argue that it was actually built during the Nabatean period. And basically, the Khatt Shebib was built and used by this semi-nomadic tribe of Bedouin people, which are just the nomadic Arab people, whose livelihoods consisted of herding and farming in the harsh, arid environment of the Jordan Desert. And basically, the Khatt Shebib was not used for any military purposes. Rather, the ancient wall served as just a border, because at the time of its construction, it's not even taller than 1.5 meters. So it's not even it's basically 4 feet tall. You know what I mean? It's not really keeping anybody out. It's more so just to let you know that it actually is a border. And basically, they are thinking that it was only built that high because they couldn't really keep the integrity of the wall for as long as it's been. So there's not too much information on it. They're still like researching this and trying to figure out what it's all purpose for, but you know, that's the way with a lot of this like older ancient kind of stuff is. It's just all researching it and never really knowing a true answer. But hey, you know what I mean, we can make some educated guesses at some point. So moving on to the next thing, rock paintings in the Colombian Amazon. So basically in 2017, a British Colombian research team funded by the European Research Council spotted these paintings that stretched across 8 miles of these cliffs in Sierra de la Lindosa, which is part of this Colombian Amazon like rainforest kind of thing. Tens of thousands of images, including depictions of mastodons, giant sloths, and other now extinct animals. Basically, this research team kept this place a secret while continuing to work and actually prepare like this TV series on the Discovery, almost like a Discovery Channel kind of thing. And basically, Live Science's Laura Gegel reports that ancient artists created the works between 12,600 and 11,800 years ago. So somewhere in between that time period. At the time, the area was transforming from a landscape of savannas, shrubs, and forests into this tropical rainforest that we actually have today. And according to a team member named Mark Robinson, who is also an archaeologist at the University of Exeter, the people who made the images were probably among the first humans to live in the Western Amazon at all. So pretty crazy shit. I always love rock paintings and stuff like that because I just think it's crazy that we always been drawing stuff. Crazy shit, man. Hey, so up next is the Kingdom of Aksum. So the Kingdom of Aksum, also known as the Aksumite Empire, was a kingdom centered in northeastern Africa and southern Arabia from classical antiquity to the early Middle Ages. It was based primarily in what is now northern Ethiopia and spanned to modern day like Sudan, basically like eastern Sudan. The kingdom was considered one of the ancient world's 4 great powers of the 3rd century by Persian prophet Mani, alongside Persia, Rome, and China. So they were super popping back then. They were one of like the big top powerhouses, basically like how United States, China, and stuff is today. Beginning with the reign of Endubis, Aksum minted its own coins, which have been excavated in locations as far as Caesarea and southern India. The kingdom continued to expand throughout the late antiquity, conquering Meroe for a very short period of time, from whom it inherited the Greek Aksum Ethiopia. So basically, the whole reason Ethiopia even got its name was because they had taken over this place called Meroe, and basically they inherited the Greek word Ethiopia, and that's how it finally got it. Basically, Aksum's final 3 centuries were considered a dark age. In uncertain circumstances, the kingdom collapsed around 960. I think that's AD. Despite its position as one of the most foremost empires of the late antiquity, the kingdom of Aksum fell into obscurity as Ethiopia remained isolated throughout the Middle Ages, and now we just have Ethiopia and Sudan and all the other countries as they are today. So pretty cool. But anyways, we're moving on to the next thing. All right, so up next we got the Dashka Stone. So the Dashka Stone is this controversial artifact that is believed to some to be the guidelines used by the architect of the world. Pretty heavy statements, if I'm being honest with you. Basically known as the map of the creator, this stone tablet has baffled researchers ever since its discovery in 1999. As impossible as it may seem, Russian experts believe the stone could be 120 million years old. That is old as fuck, my boy. But it depicts not only the environments of the Ural Mountains, but also a series of civil engineering projects, including 7,457 miles of channels, several dams, and hieroglyphic notations of unknown origin. The accuracy and perspective of the map suggests that it was created from an aerial point of observation. So basically, all these lines and indentations cut into the map are so good that people are believing that you needed an aerial view. You basically need to be looking down at this thing to actually get these cuts right. The hieroglyphs have not, as the time of writing, been deciphered, but are thought to have been related to an ancient form of Chinese. So people are thinking that this is like a really old form of just Chinese language. Archaeologists from the Bashkir State University discovered the Dashka Stone in the Ural Mountains of eastern Russia on July 21st, 1999. The discoverers were immediately struck by the size of the tablet. Basically, this thing is 58 inches high, 48 inches wide, 6 inches thick, and it weighs about a ton, which is around 2,000 pounds. Upon further examination, the researchers were even more stunned as the tablet appears to show a highly accurate topographical map of Bakshira, a specific area of the Ural Mountains, basically. So this thing has a super detailed map of this exact area at a scale of approximately 1 to 1.1 kilometers. So this thing is pretty on point with its actual size and mapping of the actual area that it's supposed to be of. Alexander Churov, a professor at Berkshire State University who led the team, named the stone Dashka in order to honor his granddaughter who was born that same day. So pretty dope. Shout out to Dashka. Hopefully you still, I mean, you was only born in 1999 because you chilling. Like, you probably like, what, 22? Not even? 23 maybe? But hey man, shout out to you. That stone's crazy. Moving on to the last thing on this this half of this tier though, so let's get it. All right, so finishing up this half of the final tier is Glacier Republic. So the Glacier Republic is a fictional micronation created as an advertising awareness campaign created by Greenpeace in Chile on March 5th, 2014 in protest over mining corporations building on or near glacier or like near this actual one specific glacier and causing a damage. According to the activists, loopholes in the law between the borders of Chile and Argentina and a legal vacuum in regulations regarding the sovereignty of glaciers allow them to legally create the republic. So basically they found like these certain loopholes, and because this glacier was approximately in between so many of these countries and it technically wasn't on anybody's actual land, they could claim this country. Chile contains 82% of South America's glaciers, but currently has no laws in place to actually protect them. And the activists say that once Chile has passed appropriate legislation recognizing and guaranteeing the integrity and protection of the glaciers, the Glacier Republic and its citizens, basically they'll give it back to Chile, is what they're saying. They're like, yo, we just want some laws to protect them and make sure that nothing's gonna happen to them. We're not gonna just be destroying these things. And then we will give up our sovereignty and we will basically return the Glacier Nation or whatever, the Glacier Republic, to Chile or to its rightful owner or whatever. Basically, therefore, the real purpose of this entire glacial republic, it's just a big protest. You know what I mean? They just want protection for these things. It's not created to be a long-lasting country at all, but to force the Chilean government to protect the glaciers. And within the first 10 days of its independence, more than 40,000 people signed up to become citizens in support of the republic, which has already opened embassies in about 40 countries around the world, which is essentially just those that Greenpeace, the actual country, international, already has offices in. But anyways, pretty sick shit. Check them out. To be honest, I don't know if they're still doing their thing because that was back in 2014, but I'm sure they still need some signatures and stuff. So anyways, if I can't find the link, I'll link that down below too. But other than that, if y'all watch this whole thing, I appreciate y'all. Make sure you subscribe. I got the link down below to my clothing brand and shit. Anything else? Not really. Make sure that y'all get laid, stay dangerous, and I'll catch y'all later. Deuces.